The Knight. The Roaring Knight. Pretty cool guy. Probably my favorite character introduced in chapter 3 and 4. Yes, I love Tenor. Yes, I love Gerson. But the Knight just has so much going for them. The Knight barely appears, and yet they've already left such a big impact on the story and the community. But what makes the Knight so charismatic, so important to the story, and all round such a good villain? Well, put blatantly, it's fear. Let's break it down. Even when the Knight isn't around, the ripples of their actions can still be felt. The core of each chapter, the Dark Fountains, are all caused by the Knight, as well as King and Queen both being influenced by the Knight, King being brought to power, and Queen following their actions. This makes it feel like the Knight almost has a grip over the adventure, able to shape it without even being there, as Devil puts it, in the shadow of the Knight's hand. Chapter 1 and 2 definitely shows the mystery of the Knight, but they make sure to keep it in the background, never being directly relevant. Why focus on the Knight when we could be having a fun adventure? That's what the Dark Fountains are for, right? Even after Rousey reveals the Roaring, and you know, that the Roaring is trying to end the world, you have Susie saying she doesn't think the Knight is such a bad thing. The Knight has just made things more interesting. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. An introduction makes a character, and the Knight? It's hard. Literally slashing their way into the story, the Knight enters. Killing off Tenor, a beloved character, is a very impactful move. It instantly lets both the players and the characters know what the Knight is about. They're not messing around. There's already a lot to say about the Knight here. Immediately, the Knight does not look like anything you'd think. Knights are normally cladded head to toe in shining steel armor, when this Knight is cladded in unstable darkness that's constantly changing form, almost like a silhouette you can't quite make out. First looking like a sharp knight, then like a Wendigo kind of monster thing with an eye heart, also turning into an orb and a bird. Its visor is also weird. It moves around to show the only signs of emotion the Knight can. On the topic, the Knight doesn't talk, not only paralleling Chris, but also showing the Knight's more stoic tendencies, as the Knight doesn't really show any emotion. They barely even flinch when taking damage. The music that plays on the Knight's introduction, Breath, is a combination of this creepy sounding alien noises and a fluctuating heavy noise emulating breathing. Is this what the Knight sounds like? It all gives the feeling of something just being off. Even in the world of monsters, the Knight just doesn't feel right. But let's ask the real questions. My guy, why do you look like Necrozma? Why are there spikes everywhere? Literally everything is spiky. Its helmet, antlers, chestplate, fingers, feet, even its waist is mostly right angles, which kinda gives them an hourglass figure. Even its insides kind of look like an Iron Maiden. It's meant to show danger, like the entirety of its body can be used as a weapon, like a hedgehog or a cactus. The spikes act as a warning that you probably shouldn't mess with it. Back to the actual cutscene, the Knight starts crying? So much for stoicism. Their eyes dilate, so crying is what the sprite is conveying, as well as physically unstable. The Knight may also be mentally unstable too. Then a purple beam comes out of its hand and starts sucking Toriel. Okay. The Roaring Knight proceeds to roar, showing its eye and becoming almost like a Wendigo. Then it pulls a big sword from its arm? Big shadow sword. Or bat? Or knife? Like the Knight itself, its sword also changes shapes, shifting between a bat, with a point at the end to show it's still a sword, looking more like a great sword in its base, a katana when swung back, at times having a more defined hilt, changing designs completely when it comes to projectile, as well as Queen's dialogue, and the song name, implying that it's actually a knife. And wow, from this brief glimpse we already have so much, and yet there's still so many questions. In classic Toby Fox fashion, this intro is trying to subvert our expectations of what the Knight is, and the Knight here comes off as monstrous and holy, almost the exact opposite of what a Knight is meant to be. But with all that out the way, the battle starts. Uh-oh. Now, the first thing you might realize is, I'm missing a lot of health. You see, the game doesn't heal you after the Tenor fight, and while there is a save point to heal, you have to go backwards to get it, which you probably won't do as you didn't know there'd be another fight after Tenor. But don't worry, I'm sure the knight won't be that hard.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Oh, no, 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 don't like that.
Oh my god!
Oh, we're not killing this thing. It's over.
Oh no. The knight is by far the strongest foe you've faced so far. Even the clown and the mailman have exploitable weaknesses. The knight stands strong with every factor of the battle going against our favor. No axe will work in this battle, leaving our only option to fight, which is not a very promising option. It's so demotivating seeing this massive health bar barely move even after you put your all into an attack. Not only is our damage pitiful compared to the knight's defense, but the knight's attacks are brutal. A lot of them put us in constant danger, requiring a lot of movement. To go along with its big blade, most of the knight's attacks are slashing based, which shows how much of a skilled swordsman the knight is, literally cutting the entire battle box with one swing of its sword, requiring us to duck and weave between the shrapnel left behind. Throwing swords at us requiring to move along the inverse axis to dodge. This attack is all about spacing. If you hit the edge of the battle box, you're probably also going to get hit by the knight's attack. This gets even more difficult in the second variation of the attack, where a ring of swords lurk around you, limiting your movement even more and punishing even slightly moving out of the lines. They can also create a tunnel of swords around you, forcing you to squeeze through to avoid a massive amount of pain, unless it's the circle variation. Also, slashing many times, which you need to weave between, even creating a sans-like circle of pain that you need to run around to avoid damage. The knight's arsenal is not only brutal, it also hits like a truck, able to kill you in just 1 or 2 hits, punishing even the smallest of mistakes. And when Susie and Rousey are downed, the text "Swooned" appears, with them being sent to minus 999 health. Because of this, revivements and dust become a necessity, with regular healing items becoming basically useless. But because you weren't prepared for this fight, you're probably not going to have all the mints on you. Personally, I carry my weakest healing items on me, so I came into this fight very unprepared. But good healing doesn't really matter, as the knight's attacks are so brutal, you can lose in 1 turn, on full health. This happened to me. It doesn't help that the whole battle, the terrifying theme Black Knife, an ode to the knight's weapon, plays. It even has the chase theme in it to show the danger of the situation. This whole boss fight is designed to give you no chance on your first try, really hammering home that the knight is not a force to be messed with. But what if you push further? Keep trying again and again, slowly whittling down knight's health bit by bit. By doing the sword route, you can get the Shadow Mantle, slightly reducing the damage taken by the knight. The term "slightly" is doing a lot of lifting there. As you get further into the battle, Susie gives a speech about how the knight has no friends. It could never beat us, ironically juxtaposed by me getting my ass beat. As the battle goes on, the attacks only get harder and harder, and your heals will be running lower and lower. You will lose over and over again, every time just learning a bit more about the knight's attacks, slowly dodging and getting better, until... You actually won? No, you didn't! You pushed the knight, and the knight pushed back harder. That's all that happened. You lowered the knight to 80% health. Well done! You only have to do that 4 more times. Too bad the knight was holding back the entire time and can just end you in an instant. The knight is just better than you. The knight is just stronger than you. The knight will always win. This was never a fight of determination. In every single fight in both Undertale and Deltarune, you can win with enough perseverance, with enough trying. The knight wants you to think this is a battle like sand. If you try hard enough over and over again, you can win. But you can't. You can't win. You literally can't win. After thoroughly beating our asses, the knight refuses to elaborate, grabs Undyne, and dips to its home in the bunker down at the bottom of hometown. So what was this encounter trying to show? It's meant to show us what we're really up against. The true horror that is the knight. The true horror with fountains. The true horror which we find ourselves facing head on. The more mystery that surrounds the knight, the more horrific it becomes. There are so many possible ways to explain every single aspect of the knight. There's so many things that feel like they're so unexplainable. And that's what Toby was going for. The fear of the dark. The whole thing that makes the darkness scary is the unknown. When we let our minds make shapes from the abstract darkness, it can imagine horrific things. And more than that, all of the villains before were just darkness. No matter how threatening they are, it's just a part of the fantasy. But the knight's very real. The knight isn't fantasy. And the bunker is proof of this. A sign that somewhere in hometown, the knight is always lurking. This creature, strange monster, lives somewhere among us. This isn't fantasy anymore. This is real stuff that affects the real world. The knight is meant to show us that our worst nightmare is very real. And that's great! In a game with primarily themes of escapism, making an antagonist a manifestation of fear from the real world is amazing thematically. And all the mysteries surrounding the knight do wonders to build the intrigue of the game. Why does the knight want to end the world? Who is the knight? How deep does the conspiracy go? All great questions, but we aren't here to discuss that. Let's look at another thing the knight does well as an antagonist. The knight is someone you want to beat. Because the knight is so strong, and keeps constantly beating us, all without breaking a sweat, it creates a rival-like relationship, where the knight is superior to the Delta Warriors, crushing them in their current state. The player wants to get better and better. The player wants to beat the knight. I want to see the Delta Warriors overcome this obstacle and surpass the knight. Some players might even want to seek out the knight just to fight them again. After all, there's nothing more satisfying than beating a tough enemy. At least Dark Souls players would think so. Put me back in the ring, coach! We're going for round 2, baby! We're going to beat the knight! Chapter 4. You will never beat the knight. Unlike Chapter 3, where the knight appears as a surprise guest cameo, Chapter 4, and the Dark Sanctuary, doesn't have a ruling monarch, making the knight the main villain of the chapter. The knight shows this by instantly beating our asses the second we get in the fountain. This also sets up the goals of the chapter. Obviously we have closing the fountain, the standard, but also the stakes are a bit higher in this one. We have to save the choir that was in the church before the knight took over, including Toriel. You may have already noticed this, but Chapter 4 generally has a much more serious tone compared to the other chapters. There are multiple ways to see this, as in lack of side characters, soundtrack, but most importantly that the stakes are a lot higher compared to the other chapters. But it's interesting that the chapter's tone actually starts pretty light. It isn't until we get to a certain reindeer that the tone starts dipping, and then with this encounter of the knight, setting up a much more serious premise. All this to say, a character changing the tone, just by their actions alone, shows just how important the knight is, just how seriously we have to take them. But anyway, for a chapter where the knight's the main villain, they barely appear. The knight just sits at the top of the Dark World, doing nothing, and when you get too close, they just run away, and locks the door behind them, as if they're just trying to stall us. But why? The Knight has already shown that they can cut us down with no issue. Well, it's not confirmed, but I think they know about the Choir. They know that we think the Choir is in the Dark World, and the Knight uses this to make us spend as much time in the Dark World as possible. Probably so we see the final prophecy, and realize just how screwed we are. This is just my personal opinion on what the Knight is doing here, and I think it goes along well with the Knight's whole MO to spread and use our fear. And also the theme of the Knight's impacts, trailing far beyond its actions. Now, let's talk about the best Knight scene in Chapter 4. After going through all 3 sanctuaries, you finally reach a Knight. This is the end of the Dark World, there's nowhere left to run. We see the Knight just standing, looking almost distracted. Of course they're not, but it's weird seeing the Knight stare off like this. Susie starts gloating to the Knight that if they close the Dark Fountain, they win. Susie says that the reason the Knight stays in the Dark World, stays in the shadow, is because in the Light World, in the light, they're weak. At this remark, the Knight laughs. Susie, now a little thrown off, claims that we got the fountain and the Knight has lost. The Knight hears this, readies its sword, and like nothing, launches 5 swords into the ground, creating a titan. As soon as we start to think we've won, the Knight throws us into the worst possible situation, just like it was nothing. But more interestingly than that, I want to focus on Susie's interaction here. If you remember, in Chapter 3, there was also an interaction between Susie and the Knight, where Susie says the Knight is weak, because they have no one else to stand besides them. But she's wrong and the Knight destroys us. This interaction is very similar, as Susie once again calls the Knight weak. However, Susie is once again wrong. The Knight isn't laughing because they know how wrong they are. The Knight's laughing because what Susie said is ironic. We don't know how truly screwed we are. Because the Knight clouds itself in darkness, it may lead us to believe that the Light World version is actually weak. However, because we truly don't know who or what the Knight is, we can't say that for sure. This interaction makes me think the Knight is someone who can hold their own in the Light World, same as the Dark. Of course, even after the Titan is beaten, the real Dark trick is still left. After leaving the Dark World, the truth becomes clear. The Choir we were trying to save the entire chapter was a trick. It was all a trick. The Choir were never there, and quite frankly, we did all of Chapter 4 for nothing. Our fear of losing Toriel was taken advantage of, and, well, what do we have now? Especially after seeing the prophecy, it feels like the Knight just completely destroyed our morale this chapter. Conclusion. So, what makes the Knight such a good villain? I would say primarily fear and intimidation. This nightmare just always seems to be around us, in both light and dark worlds. The Knight's presence can always be felt, and as we progress through the chapters, their presence only grows. And this is when the Knight isn't around. When we're directly confronting them, things get worse. The Knight has the capacity to escalate situations far beyond what we can handle. Anytime we think we've made progress against them, the Knight's immense power puts us in our place. The Knight's power actually kind of causes a problem for them as a villain, as in writing-wise. You see, powerful antagonists like the Knight have one fatal flaw. It's too easy for them to win. It's hard to make an encounter with a powerful antagonist not feel like a cop-out. It's hard to justify the antagonist not just ending the hero's life. Right now, the Knight avoids this problem by hiding its true intentions, keeping its smaller goals a mystery, which makes them such an unknown threat, but one that should still be feared, as we do know they want to cause the roaring. The Knight embodies the fear of the darkness, arguably more than the Titans, in the way it hides itself, capable of being any number of horrifying things. In the same way, the Knight's plans are left in the dark, making us worry about the true extent of it. Why do they want to sacrifice and die? It doesn't help that they always seem to have the upper hand, always one step ahead of us. And, like the prophecy, the Knight is certain that it will always happen. It feels like they'll always beat us. The Knight feels impossible to beat, but there's a reason why Deltarune's biggest theme is hope. In Deltarune, even when things look impossible, there is a way to change the story. The darkness only seems scary because you don't know what's there. Once the truth of the night is discovered, they may seem a lot easier to beat, a lot more like a flawed person than some horrific monster. And just remember, a villain like the Knight is made to be defeated. Is made to be overcome.